The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at them with wonder and hope. They sent signals into the void. They built telescopes that could see billions of light years away. They asked the same question over and over again. Are we alone? The answer came on a cold morning in October. It came not with a whisper but with the roar of 1,000 ships breaking through Earth's atmosphere. Admiral Wei stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Coalition. Her hands were steady even as every screen around her showed red warnings. The fleet had arrived. 347 warships, each one the size of a small city. They blocked out the sun over the Pacific Ocean. Their shadow fell across 3 continents. They had conquered 63 worlds across 4 galaxies. They had never lost a war. Their technology was 5,000 years ahead of anything humanity had ever built. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their shields could stop nuclear explosions like they were nothing more than raindrops. They gave humanity 1 hour to surrender. General Stone stood beside Admiral. His gray hair showed his age, but his eyes burned with something that they had never seen in any species they conquered. It was not fear. It was not acceptance of death. It was something else entirely. "They want our answer," said Captain Sarah. She was young, 28 years old. She had been in the Defense Force for only 5 years. Now she was watching the end of her world. Admiral looked at the massive fleet on the screen. She thought about her daughter in Tokyo. She thought about the 8 billion people who were looking up at the sky right now, waiting to see what would happen next. She thought about every human who had ever lived and died, every dream that had been dreamed, every song that had been sung. "Tell them," she said slowly, "that Earth does not surrender." The fleet commander received the message. His name was Overlord, and he had destroyed 17 civilizations with his own fleet. He was confused by the human response. Every species he had encountered understood mathematics. They understood that 300 warships against a planet with primitive technology meant certain death. Why would they choose destruction? He decided that humans were simply stupid. It did not matter. He gave the order to begin the invasion. The first wave of descended toward Earth's major cities. New York, London, Beijing, Mumbai, Sydney. Each carried 500 soldiers. Each soldier was 9 feet tall with 4 arms and skin like armor. They had conquered planets in hours. They expected the same thing to happen on Earth. They were wrong. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, a system that no alien had ever detected came online. It was called Project Prometheus. For 30 years, humanity's greatest scientists had worked in secret. They had studied every piece of alien technology that had ever fallen to Earth. They had found crashed ships. They had decoded alien signals. They had learned. And they had built something that no one in the galaxy expected. Electromagnetic pulse weapons fired first. They were not ordinary imps. They were designed using principles that humans had stolen from themselves. The pulse wave hit like a wall of invisible fire. Their systems went dark. Their engines failed. 3,000 fell from the sky and crashed into the oceans and mountains below. Overlord watched in shock. This was not possible. The humans should not have this technology. They were a primitive species. They had only left their own moon a few times. "Send the second wave," he commanded, "and activate the planetary bombardment cannons." The bombardment cannons were weapons of total destruction. 1 shot could wipe out a city. 100 shots could turn a planet into a dead rock. They had used them many times before. They always worked. But when the cannons fired, something unexpected happened. The beams hit an invisible barrier around Earth. They scattered like light through a prism. The barrier was not perfect. Some energy got through. The city of Cairo was hit. 3 million people died in an instant, but the planet survived. Admiral felt the impact from thousands of miles away. Her screens showed the destruction in Egypt. She closed her eyes for a moment. 3 million lives, gone in a second. But if she did not keep fighting, 8 billion would follow. "Activate the hammer of God," she said. No one knew where the name came from. Some said it was from an old book. Others said it was just what the scientists called it when they realized what they had built. The hammer of God was a weapon that should not exist. It used physics that humanity did not fully understand. They had built it from pieces, from crashed ships, from stolen data, from years of desperate work. Satellites in orbit shifted their positions. Thousands of them, hidden among the normal communication satellites that humans had launched for decades. They connected to each other in a pattern. They formed a network that covered the entire planet. And then they fired. A beam of pure white light shot up from Earth. It was not one beam but thousands, all combining into a single point in space. The point was directly in the center of the fleet. The explosion that followed was visible from Mars. Overlord had exactly 2 seconds to understand what was happening before his flagship was torn apart. The beam did not just destroy matter, it unmade it. Ships that had survived bombardments from advanced civilizations were turned into expanding clouds of atoms. The light spread outward in a sphere of total destruction. 347 warships died in less than a minute. On Earth, people watched the sky light up like a second sun. They did not understand what had happened. They only knew that the shadow was gone. The alien ships that had blocked out the sun were no longer there. But victory has a price. It always does. Admiral received the reports over the next hour. Cairo was gone, 3 million dead, but that was not all. The hammer of God had used every satellite in the network. The electromagnetic feedback had destroyed the entire system. Every satellite in orbit around Earth was now dead. Communications were down worldwide. GPS was gone. Weather prediction systems were offline. And there was more. The weapon had used Earth's own magnetic field as part of its power source. The field was damaged now. Scientists reported that it would recover, but it would take years. During that time, radiation from the sun would reach Earth's surface in higher amounts. Cancer rates would increase. Crops would fail in some regions. The planet itself was wounded. General Stone looked at the data with tired eyes. "We won," he said, "but at what cost?" Captain was the one who answered. She had been running calculations since the battle ended. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. "The scientists estimate that the environmental damage from our own weapon will kill approximately 50 million people over the next 20 years. Increased radiation, failed harvests, medical complications from the disruption of our technology. 50 million people. That was the price of survival." Admiral walked outside the command center. The sun was setting, and the sky was filled with strange colors. The debris from the destroyed fleet was entering Earth's atmosphere, burning up like millions of shooting stars. It was beautiful in a terrible way. She thought about they had never lost a war because no one had ever been desperate enough to build what humanity built. No one had ever been willing to hurt themselves as badly as they hurt their enemy. That was the truth about humans that they never understood. Humans were not special because they were smart. They were not special because they were brave. They were special because they would pay any price for survival. They would wound their own world to save it. They would sacrifice millions to protect billions. They would choose the terrible option when the only other choice was extinction. In the months that followed, Earth began to rebuild. The world governments came together in a way they never had before. They worked to repair what they could and to prepare for what might come next, because everyone knew the truth now. They were not the only advanced species in the galaxy. Others would come. Others would test humanity. And humanity would be ready. The memorial for the dead was built in the ruins of Cairo. It was a simple structure, a wall with names, millions of names. Beside it was a second wall left blank. It was for the names of those who would die in the coming years from the damage that humanity had done to itself. Admiral visited the memorial 1 year after the battle. She was alone. The world called her a hero, but she did not feel like one. She had made the choice that saved the world. She had also made the choice that condemned millions to slow death. She placed her hand on the blank wall. The stone was cold. Was it worth it? She asked no one. There was no answer. There never would be. Some questions do not have answers. Some choices cannot be judged as right or wrong. They can only be accepted. Far above Earth, human scientists were already working on new defenses. They were building better weapons. They were repairing the satellites. They were preparing for the next attack, because it would come. The galaxy had noticed Earth now. A species that could destroy an entire fleet in 1 minute was either a threat to be eliminated or an ally to be respected. The Galactic Council sent a message 3 months after the battle. They offered humanity a place among the stars, trade, technology, protection. In exchange, they wanted access to the hammer of God technology. Earth's leaders debated for weeks. In the end, they refused. The hammer of God was destroyed. The plans were burned. The scientists who built it agreed to never speak of it again. Because some weapons should not exist, and the true cost of using them was something that humanity would carry forever. The stars were no longer silent. They were watching, and Earth was watching back. Captain Sarah became the new admiral of the Earth Defense Force. She was 42 years old when she took command. She had spent 14 years preparing for threats that might never come, but she understood something that the previous generation had learned the hard way. Victory means nothing if you lose yourself to achieve it. She looked up at the stars every night. She wondered if they had families on there who mourned the lost fleet. She wondered if they told stories about the terrible humans who destroyed 300 ships in a flash of light. She hoped they did, because fear was now humanity's greatest shield. The galaxy believed that humans would do anything to survive. They believed that humans would burn their own world before letting anyone take it from them. They were right. And that was the true cost, not just the millions dead, not just the wounded planet. The true cost was what humanity had become. They were survivors. They were warriors. They were a species that had looked into the darkness of extinction and decided to become something darker. Earth's defense had obliterated an entire fleet, but the people who lived on that blue marble would never be the same again. That was the price of survival among the stars.